set. Awesome. Okay, well, cheers, guys. Thank you for hanging with me. Welcome to The Water Cooler. The Water Cooler is a podcast about marketing, sales, technology. We have over 100 episodes on YouTube and iTunes, so please subscribe to us over there. Each week, we focus on bringing you guys advice that works. And this week, I couldn't be more excited to have Ryan on with me. We're going to be talking about cracking the conversion code. Now, in preparation for today, one of the things that I was looking at, Ryan, was some of the stats around lead conversion, not only in our industry, but also in just, industry and anyone involved in sales. And one thing that stood out to me was 44% of salespeople give up after one follow-up call, right? And what this says to me, at least when I hear that stat, is that I don't think people are lazy. I think that's sort of the first impression we get, right? That people are lazy, or salespeople are lazy. And I think that, at least on our team, our salespeople are some of the hardest working people on the team. They're busting their ass 7 days a week, 12-hour days in lots of instances. What I think it speaks to is that there's this perception around, all you have to do is just keep dialing for dollars. It's a numbers game. And once you get that perfect lead in the phone, right, then you're able to work your magic and convert them into business. If salespeople knew that there was simply a better way that they could actually convert, let's say people who are maybe a little bit higher in the funnel, not ready to convert today, I think they would be a lot more likely to follow up with that lead 2 or 3 or 4 times. Just as a quick intro, my name is Jimmy Mackin. I'm joined by Ryan Ronenbeck out of Austin, Texas, curator client, super sharp guy, runs a team down there, and we're going to be talking about doubling your lead conversion. But first, and Ryan, I got a bunch of questions for you, but let me just cover a couple things that catch people up on this week's news. One thing, I'm going to drop this in the chat for you guys. This is one of my favorite tools out there, which is a tool called Pablo by Buffer. Now, one of the things that I absolutely love about this tool, and one of the things that we've used this tool before in the past, is on social media, when you run any type of advertising campaign, you have to have stopping power with your ad, right? Your ad has got to stand out. It's going to pop for that person to actually want to read more, click through. Now, most people will sort of think about using tools like Canva or maybe even PicMonkey as an option there. But what Pablo has just released is they just updated a new theme that allows you to basically pre-design your images that you're going to use for your ads on social media, specifically Facebook. You can use these templates they have that are already pre-designed, and you can create beautiful images that stand out in the newsfeed to actually increase your click-through rate on your ads, drive your cost per click down, generate more leads from it. So it's one of those really simple tools that I'm a huge, huge fan of that you can begin to utilize for your business. And the last thing I want to mention, because our buddies at inbound.org had just rolled out a recent update, and we haven't mentioned them in a few weeks. People ask us all the time, where do you guys get the information and the news for the show, the topics that you cover? We subscribe to forums like Product Hunt, but one of the ones that we absolutely love is inbound.org. This is one of the best resources online for marketers, for salespeople, for anyone who's involved in service. They have tens of thousands of articles written about every topic you can imagine. And the cool thing about it is that people upvote it. So kind of like Reddit, if you can think about it for a second, where the best articles, the best topics, the best strategies are pushed to the top. And I think this solves the problem for me when I have very little time to catch up on this week's news. I want to know what's the stuff that's trending, what's the best stuff that I needed to pay attention to. And that's where inbound.org does, I think, a fantastic job. And we're getting a little bit of feedback in the chat here, Ryan, saying they're getting an echo. That might be because if you have the show pulled up on your end, on curator.com, you want to close that out. Okay, you're good?
Yeah.
That might be isolated here. And guys, give us some feedback in the chat. Is anyone else getting an echo? Okay, cool. We're good. That just might be on your end, whoever. It looks like San Jose. Yeah, Charles, that might be on your end, my friend. Cool. All right, so let's get into it, Ryan. Let's first talk about, before you implemented a sales script, right? Before you implemented the conversion code sales script, Give me, I guess, a sense of what it was like at your business in terms of what did your team do? What did you do? What were some of the scripts you guys were using, and what were some of the results from that?
Yeah, so we were using a company that gave us somewhat of a script, and it was basically, jumping in with the questions, and that was very helpful. But it wasn't very direct, and I think at the time we just did not realize how good leads could be. Not that internet leads are going to be that good, because you have to take them with the best results possible, and it's not that great, right? So if you know that the best you're going to get is 6% conversion rate on raw internet leads, then, we were looking at less than 1. And we were just waiting for that perfect lead to come in. And we'd use, a couple of scripts that we were given, but, and I think that's when I talk about, this the conversion code script, I talk a lot about how it's more of an outline, right? Because it's easier for us to have that mentality of it's an outline of how you're going to break down that conversation so that it actually is a conversation. And when you have a script, it's very automated. So once we got to where, one thing with the conversion code, it was the psychology behind it was very, eye-opening in that where, we knew that in a way that it was broken down, like the very first 30 seconds are just so important.
Well, let me stop you real quick there, just because I want to set the stage. Cause I think a lot of people, Ryan, are listening, and they're sort of in that position where they maybe either are not using a script, or B, they describe what you just said, which is it felt too rigid, right? So was your team just simply resistant to using it because it felt like,
Absolutely. And I think for me, the way I broke it down is, I know Chris had released the actual scripts, but he had that first webinar a long time before that. And I didn't even know that those scripts were coming. So what I did is I literally listened to that probably 7 or 8 times and just wrote down how I wanted it to outline. And then Chris was like, this is coming out. Well, I'm actually, had I known that, I probably wouldn't have done it, but I'm so glad I did it, because it, made me watch it, 7 or 8 times and then break it down. So getting to know it is the big thing.
Yeah. One of the things I think is important is 2 things you touch on there, which is number 1, the rigidity around a traditional sales script leaves most salespeople very paralyzed and unequipped to actually handle a real sales call. Because the moment that person gets off script, you're screwed, right? The moment that person gives you the wrong answer to your perfectly crafted question, you are dead in the water. And then it's like, then you lose that sort of swagger that you might have had. And now you're back to sort of square one, trying to get them to kind of course correct, right?
Right. And it's not going to be perfect. Well, if it is perfect, it's perfect, right? Everything happens just like it outlines. But that's why you have to memorize every little thing and use, you want it to go the way it's going to naturally flow, and hopefully it naturally flows the way it's outlined, but that very rarely does. But if you dissect the parts of it and then you get off track, then go back to something else that works. And there's little pieces of it that I had to kind of, I was listening to one of my guys the other day, and we got into the questions. The very first thing is, what kind of house are you looking for? What's the square footage? What's what school district are you in? And I said, that's great. That's great that you went into those questions, but you don't know what their why is. So in the middle of that, say, why are you moving? And if it's because, they don't want to live in the same house that the family pet died in, then you go into that later and you connect with that.
It's funny you say that. And I think this is actually, it's a great point. This idea of asking the right questions. Because that's the essence, I think, of uncovering and really getting to the root of someone's needs or desires or what they're actually trying to achieve. My neighbor, who's moving out of our apartment building in downtown Boston, he's looking for a new 1-bedroom. The why isn't that he's looking for a new 1-bedroom. The why is because him and his ex-girlfriend used to share the place, and he has a new girlfriend now, and she doesn't want to live in the same apartment as his old girlfriend moved into. So I'm the beneficiary because I might move into a nicer, bigger apartment. And you don't know, if you don't understand people's motivations, you don't understand how you can actually truly help them. And apologize to my neighbor if he's actually watching this show, which I don't think he is, but publicly outing him.
And how to connect with them over that too.
That's exactly.
That's a big thing.
Well, let me ask you a question, because this is something I think people absolutely struggle with in when you're calling internet leads, when you're calling expires, Facebook, whatever it is. It's that first minute, right? That first 60 seconds. Because I think many people on the call who are listening right now probably can say, you know what, Jimmy, if we get it, or Ryan, if I get him on the phone, I get him talking, I feel pretty good, right? But I lose it in the first 60 seconds. So just how do you coach your team on really winning that first 60 seconds?
You just got to push through it, right? And, especially on an internet lead, they may say, well, I'm looking, I was just looking. Well, okay, what are you looking at? Just break in and with the questions, it's rapid fire questions. Okay, where do you live now? Well, I'm just kind of looking. I'm not sure. Okay, so let me ask you, where do you want to move? Let me start with that. And I think when you're very tenacious about that, it's not always going to work. Some people are just going to hang up on you, right?
Yeah.
But I have had so many conversations where I could have just been, okay, well, all right, if you're just looking, and just actually broke in with the questions and in rapid fire questions, 6 or 7 questions, write them down and get them to talking.
Yeah. You and I talked about this offline before. I think one of the things that I love about your tactic is you actually have a ton of enthusiasm when you pick up the phone and you call them, and you call them as if you're calling your buddy, basically. And not that you're like flippant, but you're like, that tone is there. And I think this is important to remember, because when you get an internet lead from Zillow, from your website, from Realtor.com, whatever it is, right? They have this barrier, this roadblock, right? That's basically preventing them from really telling you what they want to tell. And the best analogy I can give you is, think about it for your own sake right now. If you get in your car, you drive to the mall, you walk over to the retail store where you're going to shop, right? You're, let's say, like a Gap. You walk in, you're greeted by a sales rep. What's the first thing they say to you? How can I help? How can I help you? Every single time. No, I'm just looking. So that happens online. That happens in these phone conversations, right? Where people are they have that guard. Well, you're not looking. You just drove 20 minutes here, parked, and you're walking to my store. You're here to buy something, right? And I think this is the thing that we have to understand, is that people will say things because they just are naturally trained to put up that roadblock because they want to be sold. So I absolutely love that. Now, there's a technique that called ARP, right? This idea of acknowledging and repeating. Just talk a little bit about how you use that technique in the sales calls. So
one thing I want to tell you about.
Go on, sorry.
Well, one thing I was going to tell you about when people actually when they call in, when I'm doing my scripts and with my agents, and they'll call in, and the first thing they'll say is, the person will answer the phone. He said, "Hello, this is Ryan with Spyglass Realty." Stop there, right? So if I'm calling you, I'm going to say, "Jimmy, hey, is it Jimmy?" And I don't want them to know why I'm calling. I'm going to call with that enthusiasm, just to talk about what you were saying just a minute ago. I'm going to call with that enthusiasm first. And like, the first thing you're doing is disarming them by that's, you're a friend calling. And then you go in with the, this is Ryan from Spyglass Realty. So, and in getting to what you're saying about the ARPing and acknowledging is, I think you're talking about when you're asking the questions, right? And then you're writing them down, because it's important to write them down. And then when you go through and you repeat them, and I like how Chris teaches it is, least save the best for last. You repeat the questions, and I have to tell my agents, wait for me to say yes, right? So you're looking to move into a 3-bedroom house, you're renting now, and really you're just trying to get out from your ex-girlfriend, right? So that's what the answer you're looking for.
Yeah. I think people will, and this is a difference, I think, what you described between an outline versus a true script. Yeah. Which is an outline, you go from question to question to question. But in the conversion code script, and what Ryan's talking about here, is this idea of acknowledging and repeating what they're saying, right? And confirming it, getting them to basically say, yes, that is what I'm looking for, right? And this is a part that, and this is the end goal and the benefit of that, is it goes from being a rigid script to a conversation, which feels very natural. And ultimately, obviously, when you have a conversation with somebody, that's where that trust is being built up through that conversation. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about this idea of proactively, uncovering objections. Because, people come to me, my friends, my family, just people I meet, they always pitching me on startup ideas, right? Telling me about the latest thing they're going to be starting and whatever, where it's a product or an app or something. And the first question I always ask them, I say, why will this idea fail? Why will this idea fail? And what's interesting to me is that when people are really excited and tell you all the benefits, they're afraid, right, to bring up the negative. They're afraid to think about it critically in terms of what are the real problems. And I think what I love about this idea, and which I want you to speak about, which is this idea of proactively uncovering objections. Most people won't experience objections to the very end of the sales call. So you're 25 minutes, 30 minutes into it, right? And then you're pretty much like at that point screwed. So just talk to me about A, what this means, and B, how you guys apply it.
Yeah, well, I think you're just trying to get down to the root of it. And, you know, I think it's if you can ask someone up front, whether, you know, hey, look, I'm going to go through a few things. I'm going to tell you what we do. And if we meet next Thursday, if everything looks good, does it make sense that we sign an agreement together to move forward? And I think that you'll get a lot of maybes, but what that does is it makes the no a lot harder. And, you know, it's easier to do on the buyer calls. I found it harder to do on the seller calls. I was actually forced into it a couple of weeks ago when I made a call, and there was a property that was about 50 miles away, but it's a listing, and listings are just easy for us, right? I've got a whole process for it. And so I said, hey, you know, I went through everything, and I said, look, if I go through everything and I actually did it because I didn't want to drive out 50 miles and not get the listing. I said, look, I'm going to send you my email. You're going to get our before and after videos. If everything looks good, are you going to be okay with signing a listing agreement? And so when you start it from that point where it's like, you know, let's not waste any time here, right? And it's not a guaranteed sale that I go out there and he signs, but it's going to be a lot more likely that he signs that listing agreement because I already set him up. That's why I'm here.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And I think that the idea of this idea of just getting like this goes to, I think, one of the things you learn a lot about when running a sales team is that you want to make sure that your team is not wasting time, right? They're not wasting time on the raw. And that's a tough balance because if you're building rapport with somebody, right, at a certain point, you've got to ask that question, right? You've got to get them to basically admit that either A, there's something that's preventing me today from moving forward, or there isn't. Right. Yeah. And that's a tough thing to get to, but certainly introducing it earlier in the call makes a lot more sense as you get geared up to actually close them. One thing that's actually interesting to me too, before we talk about how you coach your team and some of the techniques you're using there, there's some data on this. Is actually from Marketing Donut, which is a real website, by the way. 63% of people requesting information online on your websites or through other services are at least 3 months away from actually buying. 20% of them are over 12 months away from buying. And I think this speaks to this idea, Ron. I want you to talk about this. You know, if you have, let's say, a qualified lead, but you know that the timing's not right? Yep. This person checks every box, but the timing just isn't right. So you trying to get them to schedule a call or a meeting for you next Thursday doesn't make sense because they're 6 months out from buying. Obviously, a lot of salespeople basically blow that opportunity and just never get back to them. How do you guys handle that? How do you identify that? How do you make sure the team is actually taking advantage of it?
Well, and I think what you need to do is you know, whether someone's buying 3 months or a year from now, you know, you need to have a consultation with them because the reality is that they'd be better off if they live in Austin, Texas, is buying now. And so people don't really know what they want. So the idea is to get them into your office and say, look, you know, if you're looking up to 350, that's probably going to be 380, you know, and we need to, you know, and if that's okay, if you're not going to buy, that's okay. But I want to be your guide in this process. And in order to do that, we need to get a buyer's rep agreement. So, you know, it's always the next best result. You know, will they sign now or will they, you know, does that mean they're going to buy now? No, it doesn't. But you're going to start a process much earlier where you're sending them properties, you're asking them to ask questions, and you move forward that way.
You know, what's interesting about this, and I think this is important for everyone to write down and start to implement, is this idea of, in some reason, today is one of those days where the lights have actually just went off on me here. One of the things that's interesting to me is you acknowledging before you actually have that desired outcome or whatever you want to do. So as an example, you could say, as you were just outlining, I realize you don't plan to buy in the next 6 months. So you're acknowledging that they've said this, that this is their plan, right? Because you don't want to just dismiss that. You're acknowledging, hey, I realize you guys are probably 6 months out, 12 months out, but we need to meet in the next week just so I can prepare you. So when you are ready to buy, right,
Yeah.
we can, make sure we have all of our ducks in a row. So I think this is actually something that people absolutely screw up, Ryan, which is, as we go forward here, they look at it from, and this is that thing we talked about at the beginning of today's call, which is this idea that it's a numbers game, right? They're just waiting and sifting through for that perfect lead.
Mm-hmm.
When I coach our clients and we talk about marketing and sales, the one thing I always say to them is I said, I don't care about your business today. I care about your business 6 months from now, because I work with the best teams across the country and I see their commission. It's these ebbs and flows, right? And I think one of the things that great organizations, great sales organizations, great marketing organizations, they are always focusing on growth. They're always building that pipeline, right? So I love that. Now, let's transition here because we only got a few minutes left in today's show. And thank you guys so much for sticking with us. If you guys are joining late, Chris Smith couldn't join us today. We will do a repeat here, bring Chris back on because he has a ton to talk about in the conversion code. And I want to thank Ryan, obviously, for jumping on with us today. Ryan, let's talk about this idea of getting buy-in from your team, right?
Yeah.
Which is, this is the part that I think I handle the operations at Curator and product. And, buy-in is a very tough thing. Mm-hmm. In sales, people generally will revert back to what they have always done. So just talk to me a little bit about both, what your advice is for people watching in terms of getting buy-in from your team, and then how you coach your team.
Yeah. So, for us, we have a leads program, and you can either be in it or you cannot. And if you're in it, we have a requirement, and those requirements are you have to call X amount of leads per day. You have to have, we have a call night twice a month. You have to make at least every other call night. And then we're going to be doing scripts. So, the call night's been interesting. All this has developed in the last 6 months. And, I think the last one was the best one because they're calling and at first it was just mayhem. And so we made the decision that when someone's called, everyone else just shut up and listen, right? And either we can critique or we're going to learn about that. And then I think the biggest thing for us recently was actually practicing the scripts, which we get into the office and people were just freaking out over it, right? So I said, let's do it like this is, I'm gonna make a call on 9:30, you do it from home. I don't care where you're at. And I mean, I would literally do it on the way to an appointment. And of course my agents would be there at their desk, with everything out. They were real nervous, but once we got on the phone and it was one-on-one with me and them, it went much smoother. So, if you're running a team and you're wanting to do scripts, do it over the phone, because I think people are going to be more at ease with that. And I found that my agents were so much better over the phone than they were in person.
Yeah. There's two things you touched on there, which is this idea of you guys have call nights, right? Which I think some people do right now with are the mornings or nights. But you do something special, which is when someone's actually on the phone, they're connecting, and you can instantly tell they actually are, talking to a real prospect. Everyone else just listens. Did that take the team a little bit of time to actually be okay with that? Because I know if I'm calling somebody and everyone around me shuts up, I'm going to be a little bit more nervous on the phone.
Yeah, I mean, we don't shut up completely. We don't huddle around them. But once, it takes a while because we're all making calls. So it takes a while for everyone to I'm like, hey, just, be cool. Try not to draw much attention to it. And actually went over a lot smoother than you'd think. Much smoother than the in-person scripts play.
Yeah, the role playing I think is always a tough thing, and it's part of the reason why people avoid it is because it's awkward, but B they don't see the immediate impact of their business, so they say, "Why am I doing this?" Right? I should just wing it. It doesn't really represent a real call. Now, when you actually are critiquing, right, when everyone's listening on someone's sales call, just talk to me about maybe some of the lessons you've learned after actually listening to a live rep on the phone with the salesperson. What's some of the things that jump out at you that they either are doing really well or they're sort of screwing up on? There's opportunities to improve.
Well, I think the biggest thing was making sure that the questions actually deal with the life choice the person is going to make when they move. That was a big thing. Another one was one of my agents, Johnny, was I think one thing that even I had problems with was pick up the pen and paper and I'm going to tell you something really important, right? And he just mastered that, and you could just tell once there's things that like, okay, that's not necessary, right? Oh, that's just, whatever. But then you hear someone else do it masterfully. You're like, all right, I'm doing that next, and then the trial close, the feature benefit tie downs, letting them know when you hear someone doing and this is important for you to listen to your team, especially with the FBTs, because they may not be going into the benefits that you actually have to offer as good as they could be, and they may not be telling them the services that really set you apart from your competition.
It's fascinating you say this, because this is something people screw up all the time, which is the feature benefit tie down. Now, most people, and I was just on a sales call recently where someone's selling us a software product for our company. It's a feature, do you want to buy, right? Mm-hmm. Here's what the tool does. You can segment, you can add funnels, you can put people on a list. And there wasn't that B, that benefit. And this is something that people actually struggle with. I think both in real estate, they struggle to differentiate their features, and they struggle to turn the corner and talk about the benefits. So one thing that's obvious to me is that in real estate, you might belong to a RE/MAX or a Sotheby's or a KW or whatever it might be. And you might talk about the size of your network, right? You might talk about how you have this amazing marketing system in place. Those are all the features that you are offering them. And what Ryan's suggesting here is, why should the consumer give a shit? Why should they care, right? What is the benefit to me? Is it going to help me sell my home faster? Is it going to help me sell it for more money? Is it going to help me get in front of more people? You have to have that in your language. And I think the interesting thing when I think about this, Ryan, when I think about messaging specifically, because messaging is a very tough thing. We've done shows on this before in the past. Mm-hmm. I look at the testimonials from our clients and the feedback that they give us. And this is something everyone can do. You can look at your Zillow profile and look at the language that your customers use. That's the benefit. That's the B, right? So as an example, if you have something like, we're going to keep you up to date using this specific tool, this specific technique, so you know what's happening throughout the entire process. So the benefit is using their language from Zillow that Ryan kept me, in communication. So I never had to worry about what was happening next, right? Yeah. So you can use their language in such a way where you can use that in your sales script. And I know this is a little bit deep and it's very specific, but I find that if you talk to people like you talk to other real estate agents, you use their internal lingo, right? And that confuses consumers, right? We don't want to be using words like MLS and FSBO and RESPA and all this other crap because they don't know what that means. So you have to figure out a way to communicate that benefit in their own terms, right?
Yeah, and I think it's good to have other people here. I mean, I remember I went through one of them with the renovations with Chris, and he was like, I don't really understand that, I mean, coming from the mindset of a layman, I said, okay, well, I think it's a benefit, but let me just shorten it down so it makes sense. It's really important to hear what your benefit is and make sure that the average consumer, really understands that. Otherwise, it's kind of useless.
Yeah. No, I love that. One last thing, we'll wrap up today's show. I do want to talk about trial close, because this is something that this actually, it's two things I want to mention: trial close and then the preferred desired outcome, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you avoid getting that flat out no at the end of a call? So just walk us through how you trial close, and then what happens if they basically aren't ready to move forward at that point.
Yeah, so with trial close, I'd say if you're looking for properties, what's going to work best on your schedule during the week or the weekend, and during the day or in the afternoon, and that's what the trial close is. And then you move to the slot close, which is okay. So I want to put a time to get together with you. What's better, this week or this weekend? Okay, and then that's the slot close. And then if you get a flat out no, then you just go into it with the same script. Okay, well, here's what's going to happen next. Okay, just like you close. You said, you're not ready. You're not ready to talk. You're not ready to meet right now. But I do want to keep you informed so that 4 months from now, when you are ready, that you'll know where you're going with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you an introductory email with my before and after videos and things that we do for I'm going to set you up on a search based on the criteria you gave me 5 minutes ago, and then I'm going to call you in about 2 months to check in. If you have any questions in the meantime, please reach out to me. So you don't take it as you take it as, all right, we're just pushing this can down the road a little bit.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. What's great about that is two things. What most salespeople say at the end of a call is a variation of, what do you think, right? Mm-hmm. Are you ready, right? Some variation of that. And it's a very simple, very direct question. And people are, again, this idea, they're a little resistant to commit that early. So what Ryan was just saying there, which I love, is this idea of get them to basically say what's better for you during the week or during the weekend, right? And then get right into, okay, we can do 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock, right? That's that trial slot close. But if they are actually not ready to move forward, I love this idea. And this is, again, where people absolutely blow it, Ryan. And I think this is just a huge opportunity. Jeff Bezos said this. He said, invest in things that are going to be relevant 5 years from now. And I think your ability to invest in the single most important aspect of your business, which is becoming a masterful salesperson, will be relevant today, and it will be as relevant 5 years from today. I don't care what technology comes out to disrupt our industry, like what bots they have or AI or machine learning. We will still be in business as real estate agents in our industry, because this is a process that people want to work with another human being, and they want to feel comfortable and confident that their best interests are actually at heart here. So what that means for us as an industry is, if you get someone who's not ready to move forward, don't treat them like a number, right? Use your best advantage, which is building trust and building relationship. And like what Ryan's saying here is, set them up and say, hey, totally understand you're not ready to move forward. What I'm going to do next is A, B, and C. And guess what? If you do that, holy shit, watch out. That person's going to be like, wow, this person actually followed up with me, right? Where 99% of the industry doesn't do that, right?
I didn't take a no. It wasn't a no. I kept control of the conversation, and I'm just taking the next best result. We're not meeting next week. Okay, but I'm not, I took confidence, I took control, and I'm looking for the next best thing. And I'm acting like maybe they aren't lying. Maybe they're just not ready,
Yeah, exactly. I absolutely love that. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. Cheers. Appreciate you coming on today's show.
For having me.
This is the Water Cooler. We host these shows every Thursday. We're going to be posting our actual schedule on the blog. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, on iTunes. My co-host, Chris Smith, was not able to join us today. We will have Ryan back with Chris, because we want to get you guys dialed in some more conversion coach training. Thanks, guys. Have a great day and a great weekend.
Take care.
Cheers.